When Joe Biden held his first press conference, he clearly wanted to look different. Walked into the room with detailed notes, cheat sheets with key facts, even a list of reporters with their mugshots, so that the president may recognize them from his podium. But once the questions began, the new American president didn't hesitate in deviating from the talking point.
Well, from the basement candidate to the palm card president. At a White House press conference earlier this week, a press photographer captured the image of Joe Biden's so-called cheat sheet, a typed cue card with a whole lot of pre-prepared responses on the war in Ukraine. It came after that terrible episode of having to mop up comments he made in Poland, where he appeared to call for regime change. James Morrow. I tell you what, James, I'll say it again, there are cognitive issues. I have never known a leader. I've never seen one overseas. I certainly haven't seen one here.
We've been talking about this on this show for at least a year now, about the really obvious cognitive decline here. The point I'd make is that you look at these, note cards and cheat sheets. They're not, aid memoirs for complicated facts or a bunch of figures to have in front of you while you're having a high-level conversation. I can perfectly understand that we all do that from time to time. That's fine. These were pre-typed out answers to different questions, so he would know what to say about very basic things about what's happening in Ukraine, with Russia, with the American position towards Russia. And I'm concerned that this is just very dangerous because we don't even know who's writing these cards, much less what thought is being put into the policy behind them.
Here's how President Biden rattled our allies, set off a diplomatic nightmare, and threw the White House into full-on damage control mode. And he did it all in one fell swoop.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
So those remarks ended at 6:43 p.m. local time on Saturday. That was according to the White House transcript. He didn't say another word about Putin that night. But then some 40 minutes later, here was cleanup, a statement from an unnamed administration official that landed in the inboxes of reporters across the globe. The statement read, the president's point was that Putin cannot be allowed to exercise power over his neighbors or the region. He was not discussing Putin's power in Russia or regime change. And then we didn't hear from the president directly again until Sunday, when members of the press shouted at him as he left church.
Mr. President, do you want Putin removed? Mr. President, were you calling for regime change?
No.
Then yesterday, he messed it up again.
Believe what you said, that Putin can't remain in power? Or do you now regret saying that because your government has been trying to walk that back? Did your words complicate matters?
I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing in the actions of this man. Just brutality. I want to make it clear. I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
No apologies. Well, the White House press shop attempted to come up with a plan, Harris, and we create pocket cards for presidents. I did the same for President Trump. Mine, I would argue, were a little more nuanced than the one that they took of President Biden as he was speaking. Here's his pocket card. Here's what it said. Tough Putin Q&A talking points. If you weren't advocating for regime change, what did you mean? Can you clarify is the question. I was expressing moral outrage I felt towards the action of this man. I was not articulating a policy change. I'm surprised my name is President Biden wasn't at the top, because those are very elementary, kind of nuts and bolts statements.
So is the gaff machine going to get turned on? I imagine it is like, something really loud in the room that's got smoke coming out, the gaff machine. And you can't turn it off once it's on. I mean, it really is a nightmare when you consider what Remick just said. And he's right about this. Vivek is right. It isn't that he did something on purpose. It's that he did it accidentally.
Yeah.
And our enemy knows that. And so he knows he can be played with.
Joe Biden, his cheat sheets have been recently exposed in one of his meetings. Have a look. These cheat sheets aren't, big detail. They say things like, say hello to participants. You, in capital letters, take your seat. I mean, this says to me he has serious cognitive failure. This isn't, as I said, number, detail, high-level information that it's important you can't forget in the conduct of a meeting. This is basically sit up straight, mate, smile, put your tie on, all this sort of stuff.
Yes.
I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. And then the final line should be, please don't hold this sheet up so the media get it on a camera. And thank goodness we were spared the sheet that says, this is how you use the bathroom and this is how you get dressed. So I guess spore mercies there. Yeah, look, I feel it's a little unkind, but there is clear decline. And to think you need an instruction sheet
there is.
when you're a foot away from a big button, my goodness me, Peter.
Yeah, and you're right, Luke. It is sad to see, but this is a position that is far too important for everyone to be allowed to gloss over to the fact that the guy really should not be in that job. The problem is the next best option, which is the number 2, she's worse, far worse, and we're a long way away from election.
Well, the US president has been absolutely blasted online for using another cheat sheet. Biden has copped criticism for most of his presidency for the way that he handles public events. He's either mumbling or fumbling, fails to take questions from reporters, and in some instances mixes up his own policies. Joe Biden was speaking at a meeting on federal state offshore wind implementation partnership when he accidentally flashed the card. It had a few very specific dot points for the president to follow. You enter the Roosevelt room and you say hello to participants. You take your seat. You give brief comments for 2 minutes. Press departs, you ask Liz Schuler a question, you thank participants and you leave. A very detailed cheat sheet for the president to follow there. Take a look at the moment that Biden flashed the cheat sheet while speaking.
There's a difference between states that say may and say shall. If you have to say you shall give, you shall do A, B, C, they're the ones that are going to have problems, but most say may. I mean, may, and I got it reversed, may and shall. And so
today wasn't the first time the president had used the cheat sheet. In November last year, he was caught out with a list of names and photos of journalists to help him answer questions from the media at the G20 summit in Rome.
And now I'm happy to take some questions, and I'm told I should start with AP Zeke Miller. Zeke, you have a question? Didn't recognize you with the mask on. I apologize.
In June last year in Geneva, the same thing happened. The president told the media, as per usual, he had been given a list of people he was allowed to call on for questions. It happened again in August, right before the botched withdrawal of troops out of Afghanistan, where he used a pre-approved list to start his press conference. The president's critics took to social media to call him out for it today. Benny Johnson said, next time someone tries to tell you Joe Biden isn't a geriatric nursing home patient trapped in the White House, show them this. He needs a note card with step-by-step directions telling him what to do, including you take your seat. This is beyond embarrassing. Alison Royal wrote, this needs to be a history-making news story, but you'd be surprised how quickly we'll move on from this. Another person wrote, the President of the United States needs a cheat sheet instructing him how to enter a room. If this was Trump, all of the media would make this 24/7 news and demand a cognitive test until he took one. He did take one and passed with flying colours. Make Biden take one now. Finally, Biden's cheat sheet reminding him of basic functions like entering a room and you take your seat. Someone needs to put an out-of-order sign on Joey.
It's President Biden's cheat sheet. He literally tipped his hand, showing a card with step-by-step instructions. You enter the Roosevelt room and say hello. You take your seat. You give brief comments. You thank participants. You depart. The detailed instructions were written for Biden for a meeting with wind industry executives. He accidentally exposed it when he flipped it over to look at notes on the back of the card. It follows last weekend's incident when the 79-year-old president fell off his bike.